You're about to hear a Dharma talk I gave on September 7th, 2025. The talk centers around cultivating a kind of fearlessness which is based in wise view, wise intention, non-referential compassion, and ultimately gives rise to wise action. And wise action is necessary during these turbulent times when many of us are out in the streets trying our best to protect this precious democracy that we have all taken for granted in America, and now we can't. It's good to see everyone. Well, tonight is sort of dual wake up and kind of healing balm all at the same time, hopefully. We'll see. A little current events, quite a couple of days. So apparently, after our president posted a repugnant meme threatening to wage war in Chicago, Minnesota Governor Walz said, "There is nothing normal about a president declaring war on an American city." And Illinois Governor Pritzker said, "Authoritarians thrive on your silence. So be loud for America." And I think that is excellent advice. And apparently, as of 12 p.m. today, the advice worked. After hundreds of thousands of fearless Chicagoans, my nephew was one of them, took to the streets yesterday, and today the U.S. Tennis Open spectators widely booed the president when he was shown on the Jumbotron. He announced that he will not wage war on Chicago. So, be loud for America. Apparently, it works. Nevertheless, the new normal, since 121 predicts that he'll continue to sow chaos. So, let's just start tonight by defining some terms. First three terms I'm about to say, GOP, MAGA, and mainstream media seem to be normalizing all of this. So this is my way of reminding us that this is not normal. So the first term is demented. Demented means behaving wildly or irrationally due to anger, distress, or excitement. The second term is deranged, which means crazy or insane. And the third term is dementia, which means a progressive or persistent loss of intellectual functioning, especially with impairment of memory and abstract thinking, and often with personality changes. These three terms are what is apparently being fed to us as nothing wrong, nothing special. We should just be fine with this. So the next two terms are two terms that are wonderful, but can also be twisted and turned to create an environment in which those first three terms can be normalized. So the first term is faith. The meaning of faith is complete trust or confidence in someone or something, or a strong belief in God or religious tenets which are based on spiritual knowing rather than empirical proof. The second term is devotion. Devotion means love, loyalty, or zeal for a person, activity, or cause. It also can refer to worship, prayer, or religious observances. So, for instance, devotionals. These last two terms, Buddhists like us should know these two terms really well because faith and devotion are used quite a bit in the Buddhist teachings. Devotion more in the Mahayana and Vajrayana teachings, but faith in all three. Taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha means cultivating faith in the teachings, the path, any accumulations we may accrue by cultivating that faith, and of course, the resultant merit. So faith in the Buddhist path is how we accumulate merit. And of course, there's a lot of merit in faith. Unfortunately, human beings have a tendency sometimes to mistake what they should be putting their faith in. And that is when faith is open to distortion. Devotion has faith as its basis. It's a combination of faith as a cognitive understanding and then a powerful feeling that arises from such understanding. You have to have both. So, in this way, devotion actually is just more than emotion or feeling. Again, if we go back to taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, a Buddhist needs to understand what we mean when we say Buddha, what we mean when we say Dharma or the teachings, and what we're referring to when we say Sangha or the community of practitioners. With that cognitive understanding, a Buddhist then can know, these three jewels, that's what they're known as, the three jewels, they bring up this powerful feeling inside of me that makes me want so much to continue on the path. That's devotion. There are many other kinds of devotion in the Buddhist Mahayana and Vajrayana, but we won't go there right now. It's not really necessary. What is necessary is to remember that devotion also can be twisted and distorted. And people can become devoted to causes and people that are harmful. That is a situation I think we have today. This twisting, this distortion, this delusional aspect, taking refuge in people and concepts and beliefs that humans should not be taking refuge in. Thankfully, I can with confidence say that the three jewels have so much merit and are worthy of us taking refuge in them. So this is the beginning of my talk, setting this up, this container for wise view, because right now, wise view is something we all really need. When I was compiling this talk, I ended up looking back. I have the written notes from all the talks I've given since 2009? It's been a long time. And I gave a talk in 2017 where I said this: I feel devastated by the efforts of our current elected representatives to unravel this nation's democracy. This is not an unfounded fear. It is actually occurring. And then there is the reality that we are all suffering in America. Those who are not are either deluded or beneficiaries and instigators of the unraveling of America's ethos of social justice, care, wisdom, and freedom. Hard to believe I wrote that and actually said that in 2017. I tried to remember what it was like back then, and whatever it was like, what we're experiencing now is that on steroids. It's just multiplied so much more. So now is the time for summoning the strength of mind to carry on in spite of danger. And that means cultivating another quality that is very necessary and important in Buddhism and on the Buddhist path. And that is fearlessness, courage, daring, and dauntlessness. If you look through the Pali Canon, fearlessness doesn't come up a lot. Although the Buddha is always talking about how difficult it is to actually see things as they truly are. I can tell you that fearlessness and courage are talked about a lot in the Mahayana and Vajrayana schools of Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism goes so far as to acknowledge that humans must be fearless to live in a world so often ruled by the kleshas or by afflictive emotions. One of my beloved teachers, who is local to all of you, Anam Thupten, said this: the Buddhist path does not ask us to reject this ordinary world or run away into a better or ideal realm where one can completely ignore the challenges and messiness of life. To be awakened does not mean to transcend anything, but rather to be in this world completely, to embrace everything. And this kind of being in the world completely and embracing everything right now is difficult. I mean, maybe it's easy for all of you, but this is difficult. Being in the world and embracing everything means we somehow have to embrace derangement and delusion. As practitioners, we have to do that. So, one guidance source in Mahayana Buddhism is a sutra called the King of Samadhi Sutra. It's an early Mahayana Buddhist sutra, and it contains several kinds of teachings. There's teachings on emptiness, there's teachings on the Bodhisattva path, and there's also teachings on what's called the supreme meditative realization, which is actually called the King of Samadhis. And this sutra defines fearlessness as being undaunted and indifferent to attack, not being afraid of anything whatsoever. Fearlessly walking the Dharma path and fearlessly acknowledging hindrances along the path by cutting through delusion whenever it arises. And that is a tall order. So one of the verses from the King of Samadhi Sutra, this is a verse that the Buddha is actually saying in this sutra. And it goes like this. He begins by saying, existence and non-existence are extreme views. Now, of course, over in the Theravada, the Buddha was always talking about existence and non-existence and how they're extreme. So this is carried through into these teachings. And then the Buddha continues. Just as a magician makes illusions of horses, oxen, carts, and other things, nothing whatsoever is as it appears. Know all things to be like this. Nothing whatsoever is as it appears. Know all things to be like this. So that is a very powerful teaching if one wants to try to embrace derangement and delusion. So this kind of fearlessness has several gifts. The first gift is ahimsa, non-harming, non-violence. And this kind of fearlessness can be harnessed when the mind is imbued with wise view, wise intention, non-referential compassion, as I mentioned during the practice, and wise action. Now, obviously, an awakened Buddha would have all those things arising naturally. But we mere humans, we mere human practitioners, we have to rely on cultivation, on the cushion and off the cushion. So cultivating on the cushion is the time for taming the mind through formal cultivation of one-pointedness and insight. Off the cushion is our chance to see how much quiescence and clarity we can muster in the midst of turbulent life experience. And we can practice this a lot these days because every morning it seems as though there's another turbulent experience for us to practice bringing clarity and quiescence to. Another gift of this kind of fearlessness is anicca. So anicca means awakening to the impermanence of all phenomena. And this kind of fearlessness leads to sure knowing of not self and embodied non-reification. One can conceptually understand that subject-object dualism is merely a view. We hear this all the time. You can have it in your mind conceptually. Oh, okay, I know I feel like I'm inside my body and everything else is outside there. But basically, the Buddha keeps saying that none of that is real. It's not true in the sense of how it really is. And that is why the Buddha was always teaching dependent origination. And I think Matthew is going to be talking a little bit about dependent origination. So if you're interested in that, you might want to attend his day long. I won't go into it right now, but essentially, this is the way the Buddha described how what looks to us like solid separate reality, a solid separate self, honestly is just a myriad set of processes that are continually creating an illusion of a solid separate self. So conceptually, we can get it. But if we really feel into this kind of interdependence, it spontaneously releases mental and emotional fixation on distorted dualistic views of self and world. That requires a kind of embodied non-duality. And this being fully in, as Anam Thupten said, really being in, it shows us that oneness does not mean sameness. We can recognize the unconditioned oneness at the base of all manifest diversity. And in this way, we're fearless in the face of diversity. We don't require everyone to have the same beliefs. We don't require everything to be the same because we recognize, all things arise interdependently. They are all empty of any separate self-existence. And at the base is that. So diversity actually has oneness. This is a fearless view. At a certain point in the King of Samadhi Sutra, the Buddha instructs his disciple Sariputta thusly. He says, because a Tathagata has three kinds of fearlessness, they abide in safety. So fearlessness, apparently, for the Buddha, is the cause of abiding in safety. So what are these three kinds of fearlessness? The first is always knowing one's state of mind with wisdom, clarity, compassion, and confidence. The second fearlessness is always recognizing with wisdom, clarity, compassion, and confidence that all human minds can be freed from distortion and afflictive thoughts and emotions. Everyone. It doesn't matter how lost that mind is. It can be freed. And then the third, always knowing with wisdom, clarity, and confidence the unobstructed, clear light nature of mind. As I said during the practice, the mirror, unobstructed in its essence. I've mentioned confidence. What kind of confidence is this? Fearlessness bestows a gift of unconditioned inner confidence, and that arises from the direct experience of transcendent wisdom, unobstructed clarity of mind, and unimpeded open-heartedness to all experience, no matter what that experience is. So my job as a Buddhist really is to discern, moment to moment, internal mental and emotional distortions. Additionally, to rid my mind and rid its perceptive lens of untruths. And through this effort, land firmly in the fearlessness of things as they are. And things as they are includes all phenomena, from the best to the best to the worst of the worst and everything in between. Nothing is canceled out. This is the fearlessness of knowing all phenomena by neither leaving anything out nor grasping at anything. Not accepting, not rejecting. So these days, I really have been entreating myself to recall a very particular pointing out instruction over and over again. I recognize over and over again that the human condition is one of uncertainty and utter lack of security. And then I relearn how to love that truth each time I experience how devastatingly wrong my mentally constructed schemas can actually be. I experience this a lot these days because this world, it's in a state that I'm not used to. And so I find myself constructing all kinds of ideas about it. And then when I really look at them, I see delusion. I see where I'm stuck. I see where I'm lost. I see where my own preferences and my own biases are causing me to view something without clarity and unconditioned compassion. I know it's a tall order, but it seems important, at least to me, to be doing this these days. Of course, this kind of fearlessness will bring with it a measure of existential anxiety. Of course. But each time any practitioner recognizes the fundamental impermanence of existence, that practitioner gains a bit more freedom from their internal suffering. And I think ultimately that is what we wholeheartedly wish for ourselves as well as all beings. And that truth is what the Buddha awakened to under the Bodhi tree. And even he felt uneasiness at first. When he awakened, he purportedly said, "This whole existence is always trembling. I long to find myself a place unscathed, but I could not find it." Even the Buddha. I think it's best if we all try to stop seeking perfection in ourselves, in others, and in this world. And the suchness the Buddha taught us to recognize, it really ultimately is this profound surrender into human imperfection. And that imperfection, weirdly enough, is the necessary incubator for awakening. Without it, there is no awakening. So it's important to remember suffering is not what feels bad, and non-suffering is not what feels good. Knowing the actuality of inner and outer experience is non-suffering, precisely because it liberates us from the suffering of our false self-narratives, our habitual assumptions, our afflictive thoughts, our emotions, and behaviors. We can spend a lot of mind moments lost in fearfulness about current events, or we can wake up and be fearless. And as Governor Pritzker told us to do, be loud. No matter how many times we recognize that afflictive thoughts and emotions are impermanent, transparent, mere mental phenomena, the apparency of this truth can still be a shock. The natural dissolution of phenomena that mostly people fear and they don't like, and it seems so gripping. It's just incomprehensible, really, that it's of the nature to just pass away. This is actuality. Thoughts arise and pass away. Body sensations come and go. They are of the nature to shift and release on their own. Emotions arise, exist, and pass of their own accord. In the groundless ground of just knowing, self-delusion has nothing to hold on to. In the groundless ground of just knowing, self-delusion has nothing to hold on to. So why be afraid? And ultimately, our treasonous president and his GOP enablers are mere dreamlike phenomena that are of the nature to arise, exist, and pass away. But make no mistake about it, in a dreamlike world, dreamlike treason wreaks dreamlike havoc on dreamlike beings who experience dreamlike existence as solid, separate, harmful reality. So fearlessness ultimately is the vehicle for knowing dreamlike nature with undying commitment to conduct that is pristinely virtuous and powerfully transformative. This is what we can bring to the table at this important moment in our nation's history. I'm practicing clearly knowing the imprisoning narratives of my own powerlessness, hopelessness, and helplessness. We all have a voice, and this is the time to use it wisely and often. On Thursdays up here in the town I live in, there's a group of people who go to an overpass up here in the Pacific Northwest. On any given day, there are many, many people with these huge, huge banners on overpasses. And our overpass is a highway. We're the gateway for the Olympic Peninsula. So lots and lots of people come up here, especially commuting hours from Seattle and Tacoma. It is a wonderful, wonderful way to practice. You can see the people in their cars from the overpass. It's amazing. It's a highway, but you can actually see them. We have these banners and we wave a lot and we smile a lot. And lots of drivers wave back at us, and it's always incredible when people are waving at you and you're waving back, and you can just feel it. But then, of course, up here, there's a lot of people who basically give us the finger in their cars. This is the best container for practice because I can see, wow, when somebody waves, it feels so good, and you can really cling to that. But when somebody gives you the finger, to have the heart unconditionally, completely open and wave and smile at that person and just experience that is a gesture of their own mental and emotional suffering, and to wish them freedom from their suffering, it's a great, great container for practice. I highly recommend this. I'm doing this every Thursday, and it's really helping me cultivate in difficult moments the capacity for non-referential compassion. It's not an antidote. It just happens now. So to finish my talk, I'll just read a quote a little more about fearlessness from Dzogchen Rinpoche, a great Dzogchen master who is one of my teachers. He says, relax ego fixation and allow space to emerge. When space comes, rest without modifying. When experience is not stopped by acceptance or rejection, then one can really let it go. Once there is no hope or fear, what arises is inner fearlessness. Remember, all insight into the causes of suffering and non-suffering spring forth from this rich soil of pristine awareness. The quality of pristine awareness is fearlessness. Everything can come in pristine awareness. Nothing is left out. There's no hope, there's no fear. Phenomena arises, exists, and passes away. Shrinking away from human suffering is useless, particularly now. Leaning into derangement and delusion is the supreme path of liberation. And not just for us, but I believe for our nation as well. Leaning in with wisdom and non-referential compassion. And finally, from Longchenpa, there is not a single state of mind, nor any human experience, which is not spontaneous presence. It is the base of everything. So in the midst of all states, in the midst of every experience, remain in that which cannot be constructed or taken apart. This pristine awareness is free from all bias and discursiveness, serene and insubstantial like the sky. We call it unborn, and so did the Buddha. So I thank you very much.